republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Chair Hurley.
Present.
Member Young.
Here.
Member Dashiell.
Here.
Chair Lowry.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, for today's meeting. The first thing we have on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add for discussion items before we get to that stage?
I do. First of all, I wanted to let the board know that I need to leave by 3:45. Also, I'd like to add a discussion item. I believe it's a discussion that we might have had with the City Commission and a workshop, but I'm not sure. That's why I want to bring it up, about reclaiming public access or walkways in the large hotel segment, which some of those I think have been, they've gone away. So we'll discuss it more at the, when we have time.
All right, we'll add that as item 6E. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add for discussion?
Yes, I'd like to add the Vina Del Mar bridge lights as well.
Okay. Wasn't here last month. I'm sorry to hear those still aren't up. Okay, I'm going to add something 6G. I would like, it's really just for the board to have some knowledge so that we can start talking about it. We'll probably have to set it for next meeting. But this is going to be in reference to the definition of what the historic district is and how that applies to the land development code. So I would need everyone to get familiar with some of the ordinances and how they're being enacted and what that's perhaps going to do for future reference. Does anybody else have anything like that to add for discussion?
Chair, if we could remove item 5B, we will bring that back on a future agenda.
Okay, 5B will be removed. Anything else from staff?
No.
All right, in that case, I will make a motion to approve today's agenda.
A second?
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Young.
Yes.
Member Dashiell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hurley.
Yes.
Chair Lowry.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, folks, this is a section of the meeting where we have audience comments, which allows anybody in the audience to come up and speak about any matter that essentially is relevant. If you have something you'd like to talk about that's on today's agenda, you can wait and speak at that point. So does anybody have any comments they'd like to make at this stage? Any general comments? Okay, seeing no hands, we'll move on to item 3, which is approval of minutes. I wasn't present at that date. I haven't reviewed them, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to make any motions. So does anybody have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of July 9th, 2026 as written.
I'll second that motion.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Dashiell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hurley.
Yes.
Member Young.
Yes.
Chair Lowry.
I guess yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, next we have item 4, which is a presentation on historical plaques. Ms. Coleman?
Good afternoon, everyone, and board members. Kristen Coleman, Planning Manager. So before we begin today's meeting, we would like to take a few moments to recognize and celebrate our newest 26 Historic Plaque Program recipients. Our historic buildings and homes tell the story of St. Pete Beach and the people who helped shape our community. By displaying a historic plaque, these property owners not only recognizing the significance of their buildings, but are also helping to preserve and share our city's rich history with residents and visitors alike. The program is a partnership between the city and our property owners, and we sincerely appreciate their commitment to preserving the character and heritage of St. Pete Beach. We are grateful to those who have chosen to participate, including both newly designated historic properties and for those who have previously been recognized on the Historic Registry. As we call each recipient forward, we invite those in attendance to join us to receive their plaque. And for those who are unable to be with us today, we look forward to coordinating a time for the plaque pickup. Following the presentation, we will take a group photo of those who are willing to participate. And again, congratulations to all of our recipients, and thank you for helping celebrate and preserve the history of St. Pete Beach for generations to come. And please also be sure to hang around for a few minutes after receiving your plaque for general best practices on plaque placement and also installation information, because I'm not going to be installing them. So I did want to give you just some snapshots and some metrics just of where we are. So post 2024 storm activity, we do have 55 new structures have received local historic designation since November of 2024. We did have 2 structures delist from our registry for electively delisted for elevation of their homes, and those are both located on 4th Ave. And 33 structures have received certificates of appropriateness for demolition. 8 of those were locally designated, and 25 were contributing structures as far as our 2015 survey. It's not working. It says ready. What's that mean?
It looks like the PowerPoint's locked up. IT, do you mind taking a look?
So it changes on the monitor here, but not on the screen. It's just a cliffhanger on the final number.
There we go.
So surprise, as far as our current designation, we do have 111 structures that actually have local historic designation currently. So sorry for that cliffhanger. So I think with that, we will go ahead and give out our plaques.
Okay.
Right, and you can read them off for us.
Read them off. As I read your property off, if you could come up, accept your plaque. Starting off with the city's only historically designated, individually listed historic sign. This is 4350 Gulf Boulevard, the Bon Air neon sign. This is designation 61, constructed circa 1953. Do we have anyone present? Okay, property 2, 801 Gulf Way. This is the Keystone, designation 78, constructed circa 1945.
Yeah, I think he talks about it.
You want to do a group picture at the end? Yeah. Okay. If anybody wants to take a picture? We could also bring this up back. Oh.
I did the photo bomb.
Tell me.
Let's do the next one. We'll do groups of 3.
Okay.
Just hang here.
Okay, the next is residence at 103 7th Avenue, designation 55, constructed circa 1915.
Oh, we're already up there. Okay.
Then we have 102 8th Avenue, La Tortuga, designation number 40, constructed circa 1923. We have 111 10th Avenue, designation 103. This is the oldest home receiving a designation plaque today, constructed circa 1905. We have 113 11th Avenue, the Coconut Inn. They were designation 56, constructed circa 1921. Moving on, we have the residence at 108 12th Avenue, designation 100, constructed circa 1922. We have 108 15th Avenue, designation number 94, constructed circa 1925. And we have the residence at 105 17th Avenue, designation number 105, constructed circa 1941. Anyone present? No. Okay, we have 103 18th Avenue, designation 118, constructed circa 1952. Chris? Residence at 102 20th Avenue, designation number 88, constructed circa 1944. The residence at 105 22nd Avenue, this is designation 32, constructed circa 1939. Residence at 102 23rd Avenue, designation 128, constructed circa 1951. We have the residence at 2507 Pastor Grill Way, designation number 80, constructed circa 1934. And the residence at 3105 South Debazon Avenue, historic designation 129, constructed circa 1955. Nearby, we have 3207 South Debazon Avenue, designation number 130, constructed circa 1950. 3311 East Davison Avenue, constructed circa 1950. This is designation 122. 3514 Casablanca Avenue, designation number 90, constructed circa 1960.
See, you're mobile.
The residence at 3601 Casablanca Avenue, designation number 70, constructed circa 1951. The residence at 3607 Casablanca Avenue, designation number 99, constructed circa 1954. The city's only individually listed dock, 3612 East Maritana Drive, designation number 71, constructed circa 1941. We have 3600 Bella Vista Drive East, a residence designation number 135, constructed circa 1969, the newest structure receiving an award today. We have the Beach Theater at 315 Corey Avenue, designation number 76, circa 1939. The residence at 8345 Boca Ciega Drive, designation number 127, constructed circa 1925. Then we have 410 87th Avenue, designation 117, constructed circa 1956. And last but not least, the residence at 107 22nd Avenue, designation 84, constructed circa 1925.
He was one of our last orders, and they got it in just in time.
Round of applause to everyone for attending. Thank you.
So congratulations, everyone. And now that you have those really heavy plaques, I just wanted to kind of give you the general best practices for plaque placement. Now, we don't have a specific placement standard, but these are general practices. So located inside of your envelope, you have instructions on how to install. You also have hardware within there. And then also a copy of the slides, so you have it all written down and you don't have to totally remember everything. But just to go over the location on the structure, generally it is near the main entrance, beside or on near the front door. It's on a primary street facing of the front of your house or facade, and so it could be visible from the sidewalk or from street level. And relatively 5 to 6 feet above grade, just for easy reading. So if somebody's coming into your home, they can open the door and see that. Also, you want to just be cognizant, it is a bronze plaque, but you do want to protect it from the elements. So if it is a historic material, just make sure you don't want to mount it on something that can't be replaced. If you, in the instance of our dock, they may want to consider posting it on one of the posts near the dock entrance, or you can mount it on an alternative method if the front of the building is not able to be done. Mounting it beneath an eave or overhang to protect it from the rain so it's shielded, and then the hardware again is included in your packet. But if something should happen, you can always contact me and I'd be happy to reach out to the sign company. Something otherwise to keep in consideration, especially for our commercial structures, keep distance from signage or markers to avoid clutter. You as the property owner maintain the plaque over time, and just be mindful, especially again for commercial, of nearby ADA signage and accessibility standards, because you kind of want that plaque to stand on its own and not be, you want it to shine, I guess I could say. And if there are any other questions, feel free to reach out to staff or the team. We'd be happy to help you. And congratulations. And if you want to get one group picture, we could try. Would you like to try to do that?
If I can just interject really quickly, I also want to thank the staff who worked so hard to make sure that all of these historic designations happened and really rallied to make sure our community was protected today and going forward. So thank you to staff for making it happen.
You gonna try to get a group photo?
I think we have a public comment.
One comment,
Oh, okay, good. I was
if
gonna.
possible, and then we'll get the group photo.
Okay, fine.
Thank you, Kristen. Mr. Chair, members, what a wonderful opportunity. I'm 3601 Casablanca Avenue, Mike Clark. I'm also a civil engineer by trade and profession. I believe this fantastic success, I just want to bring a cautionary tale. The water will come again, and so if you did not rebuild with materials that will resist the future event, the water, then if the water gets in your house, you will have the same results. So it was very important to defend the house. So we have door dams that bolt into the front of the house to protect water coming in the entrances. We have reduced a couple of doors with the permission of the historic board. And we used materials that were waterproof, not just water resistant. And so the entire interior of our house, if we do take water, we are in a much, much better position to hose it down rather than having to rip it out. There is one point of vulnerability that again and again, as I talk to my neighbors and friends, that we're missing, and that is the sanitary sewer system. We frequently hear stories of folks that will come up here very upset and they will say, my house is full of you know what. Well, that's because it came up through the pipes. As the height of the water at 4 feet pushes down through the sanitary sewer system, which is not pressurized, it's open, it will find its way through the sanitary sewer laterals, and it will come up in your bathroom sink, your toilets, and your showers first. And it will come relentlessly. It will come up like a faucet if you turned it on, probably splashing 2 or 3 feet high until it balances with the depth of the water outside. So the way to prevent that is to put a one-way valve in your sanitary sewer lateral where it comes out or connects to the city's main collection pipe. It's either in the front street or in your back lot. If you do not do that, then you are subject to the same thing that happened once before. It is a little pricey, and so when I was talking with some public works folks the other day, I said, well, I installed a lateral protection. What if, on my side of the block, for about the same amount of money, we installed in the city's main a similar device, a one-way trap with a washout that would then protect the entire line of buildings going up through my neighborhood from this fate. So mine cost around $5,000. I think our contractors can probably hit that mark, maybe a little bit higher because of difficulty. But now we're protecting with one device an entire length of homes rather than just mine. So I'd just like to put that cautionary tale out there to everybody. And again, thank you very much for leading this initiative. It's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Appreciate it. Anybody else have any comments on the plaque situation or anything else they want to talk to about this? I'd like to thank you all for coming. You can all certainly sit around. You can all stay here. It'd be great if you did. I would just point out that at this meeting we're going to talk about some things about the historic district and stuff, and you all are the backbone of the historic district, obviously, or the historic areas of Paso Grill. And there'll be some things coming up that you all have interest in, so I would ask that you, if you don't stay here, you watch at home or you just stay tuned in. Obviously, the historic board appreciates everything you've done. We obviously wouldn't be here trying to do things for you all, so we do appreciate the support. So with that, I guess we can go forward. Rich, did you have something you wanted to do? Oh, yeah, photos, yes. Come on up, please.
Hi. Oh, thank you.
So do the face, Rich.
I don't want to be a photo bomber.
That's a good idea.
Pardon?
Hey, good to see you. Thank you.
Phone number?
Okay, thank you all. Wear
Sure.
them proudly.
The right-hand side, I think he has a black shirt on and jeans.
Did he get called?
No, he has a gray shirt on and jeans.
No.
Maybe.
Okay, before we leave, like, the discussion about plaques just for a minute, I was just wondering, Brandon or Kristen, if you could tell us, we have 111 current designations. Do you know how many of those have plaques? If you know, I'm just trying to get an idea, because I know many people have already had them and they didn't have to get them again.
Right. So when I was resurrecting this program, I did go through and we have a list of that if they had an existing plaque. So I reached out anybody that was new since 2024 that has been designated, or in our spreadsheet that did not have a plaque, and reached out to see if they were interested as well. So I can give you that number shortly. I just have to go look at my
That's
spreadsheet.
fine, I'm just trying to get an idea for that, because also I was thinking, I know we've talked in the last few meetings about doing historic markers, which are actually different than plaques on certain areas of St. Pete Beach that I guess we could kind of determine whether or not we think that would be something of value. For example, we saw the Beach Theater, the applause. Everyone, of course, is pretty happy that that was redone, but it doesn't have a historic marker, and I think that'd be something we should look into. And my question, I suppose, is this company that put together these plaques, did they do the historic markers? Is it the same?
I don't believe so. They may have the capability to do it, but our prior company was actually located in Pennsylvania.
Right.
So I had to go and find, fortunately, this one was located in Florida, but
Could you look into that only to see if, you know, we haven't done a historical marker, I think, for a few years, so, and I'm not sure who, I think the last one we did was probably at Mary Pier, and I'm not sure who staff used or how that went about. But, you know, again, it strikes me that there's a number of areas where you could do historic markers. Also, more along the same line as plaques, someone mentioned this to me, I thought it was a pretty interesting idea, that on some of the really, really old buildings that are on 8th Avenue, as opposed to having a historic marker or a historic designation plaque, this would, of course, be something for the individual owners to foot the bill on unless there's public sentiment. It'd be kind of interesting to have plaques on each individual building that showed the actual year of some of those buildings. Some of those are, you know, as we know, are I think 1908 or even earlier than that. And so I'm wondering, when you're talking to these people that made these plaques, I wonder if they do that kind of work as well? You know, just.
It's totally possible. They
Yes.
do a whole variety of bronze casting. As you know, each one of these are custom, individually done. The city we did have to pay for the actual creation of
Okay.
the mold of it,
Yep.
and then did from there.
Well, could I ask you, if you can't do it by next meeting, that's fine, but just to kind of look into what I was talking about to see if we can get an idea so we can maybe approach people about potentially doing that. And it'd be great if we just had
I can certainly provide the contact
all that stuff.
information. I don't know if that's something the city would necessarily facilitate if they weren't part of that, but I'd be absolutely happy to share my contact.
Calls myself, I just don't know who we're dealing with.
But I do believe another member of the board can share possibly some information on the markers as well.
As well,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
have gotten some information from her, but, you know.
Yes, so actually, I think the Keystone was the most recent of the historical markers.
That's right, yes.
That was done, and that was applied through the state, and they made it a very smooth, easy process. I believe we applied July of '23. There was a Zoom call February of '24 with a group of other people throughout the state that were wanting to receive the state designation. And then based upon that call, based upon the research that the state has done, they either approve or deny the request. And then from there, it goes to the verbiage that they'd like to see on the plaque, where they would like that to be placed. And then you place, each individual property places the order through a company, I believe that was out of Ohio. And then the person that is receiving the designation is the one that pays for it. And I believe that the historic marker was just over 2,000, I believe, possibly 2,500. I'm happy to help anybody that would be interested in learning more on how to do it. The state was wonderful to talk to and work with, and I would encourage everyone to do it. It was exceptional.
So, but along that line, is this, when we do, I mean, that was a different process than when we do the historic markers through the city themselves, but is it the same people, do you know, whether it's the same people, the state we deal with each time? Do you follow what I'm saying?
It's a board. The state has a historic board that I believe our gentleman that we worked one-on-one with, his name was Jeremy. And then the board that we had the call with was a group of, I want to say, 5 to 6 people throughout the state. One woman was, I believe, a professor over at University of South Florida. And I think a lot of these people try to make sure that they're putting eyes on whoever it is or whatever entity it is that's trying to get the state designation. On the call that we were on, it was actually, there was members of a Native American tribe out of the Everglades, and they had their tribal legal counsel on the call. It was incredible. I mean, it really is amazing to hear and just see all of the history that our state has, and it's all facets. And so I think that's one thing that was my takeaway is it doesn't just have to be a business. It can be a site that's considered to be state designated as a historical site. It can be anything. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I guess my question, and Brandon or Kristen, maybe you can illuminate me on this. So when we've done markers in the past, like the one that's at Mary Pier or at down on Pass Grill in front of the Paradise Grill, is the city paying for those? They are, aren't they? When we do it through that process, if you know. I mean, I do appreciate what the Keystone did, and that's great, but you know, that bill was footed by individuals as opposed to the city. And I think when we've done these before, the city foots the bill.
That we could look into. I mean, it would make sense because that is a city-owned entity rather than,
Correct.
you know, an individual parcel. But we could look into it and see what we
You
find.
can do that, because I was approached by a historic business, and which it's already been historically designated, and they want to get a historic marker. And so the question is, well, if they want to do that, is it faster to go the way the Keystone went and pay for it yourself, let's say, or is the same time frame or longer or whatever to go through the state in a different way with the city behind it and pay for it that way? You know, because before when we did it, we actually the last one I can think of before the Keystone was the Mary Pier, where we came up with the verbiage, went through the city commission and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just trying to, so I could tell people, it's going to take you 3 years to do it this way or 1 year this way, but this way you don't pay, this way you do pay. I just, I think people are starting to ask those questions.
Okay,
So if we can get a little more information, that'd be great.
sure, not a problem.
Thank you, appreciate that. Thank you, Danielle.
Sure.
Okay, so now we're moving on to action items, which is 5A. It's a certificate for appropriateness number 26118 for the residents at 2702 Pasadena Way.
And Mr. Chair, did you want to go ahead and swear everybody in?
Sure. And so anyone that's going to potentially give testimony on anything this afternoon, we need to have you sworn in. Madam Clerk, could you do the oath, please?
Anyone who will be testifying before the board today needs to be sworn in. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information that you will be sharing with the board is truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're at 5A, certificate of appropriateness, the residence is 2702 Pasadena Way. Mr. Berry?
If we could pull the PowerPoint, please. So this is a follow-on item to a variance case that was approved by the Board of Adjustment just over a month ago. The owners are Sharon and Gerald Iacangelo. The property address is 2702 Pasadena Way. Staff is requesting board approval for the removal and replacement of a near-grade deck associated with a historic residence that was designated number 82 in December of 2024. This is required pursuant to Land Development Code Section 28.13. This deck itself is not a component of the historic structure. It is supported independently from the structure. However, because it is a removal and replacement of a feature that encroaches into the setbacks, it does require the Historic Preservation Board's input and acceptance. You can see here an aerial of the property. The applicant is replacing a deck, and I'll show it on the next slide, where the southern setback is approximately ½ a foot from the property line. This is an encroachment into the 5-foot southern side setback. It is an open slatted deck. It is currently wood. It's in a fairly poor shape because of the 2024 storms. They are planning to replace it with a wood support and then an HDPE polyethylene plastic decking, and I'll show that in a moment. You can see here the deck that is proposed for replacement. It is in the same footprint. It was originally constructed back in the 1980s, and it adjoins a structure which was designated in 2024. You can see here, looking to the south, that is the wood fence that bisects the property from the property to its south. You can see the wood deck onto the left side of the screen. Another look toward the southern property line that is currently a wooden deck that is fully proposed for replacement. And another look just showing the condition of the structure. We did find that the request meets the certificate of appropriateness criteria. It is located to the south side toward the rear of the property. It's located within the southern side yard. It is visible from the frontage. However, the most visible features will be the aluminum railings. The deck itself only extends approximately 2 feet above grade. So the fact that it is made from a more modern material, we didn't feel to be adverse to the certificate of appropriateness criteria. It does not alter any historic element of the property or the structure. It doesn't affect the residence's features or finishes. Most importantly, it could be removed or replaced in the future without damaging the primary structure. There would need to be some kind of a deck, some other kind of a landing at the back of the structure. There is an access from the rear of the residence toward the deck, but it could be replaced in the future with another feature. No chemical treatments are to be undertaken, and we do find that it meets all the Secretary of the Interior standards. Because this had been an item that was supposed to be brought to the board prior to the Board of Adjustment, we did state that we would handle this on behalf of the property owner. They are not present, but we do ask for your approval for the certificate of appropriateness. That's case 26118. Happy to take any questions.
just basically a material change, is that right?
Correct, reconstruction with material change.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness 26118 for 2702 Pasagrove Way.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Good. Now, moving on, discussion item 6A, design review number 26116 for the residents at 104 18th Avenue.
We could pull the PowerPoint back up. So this is design review case 26116 for 104 18th Avenue. Michael Carrier is representing TB Invest Company. This is property address of 104 18th Avenue. This is a design review for a new house medium structure. So you can see here the layout, the site plan footprint of the structure. This board reviewed a similar footprint and massing structure just, I believe it was earlier last year. This is the neighbor to a similar structure that was, I believe it's currently under permitting. You can see here the front elevation that is at the top of the screen, and then the rear alleyway elevation at the bottom of the screen. Again, similar features to the home located just next to it at 106 18th Avenue. And you can see here the rendering showing those front and rear elevations. It does have more modern features. The other design had more of a Key West styling, and I'm sure the representative can speak more about why those design changes were made to give some differentiation between the two structures. But the footprint, the massing, and the features are similar. Architecture is varied. As mentioned before, it does consider what I would consider to be a more modern interpretation of the structure that is adjoining it. Our design review expert did look this over. They did not have any features, or they did not have any comments rather on the architectural features. Staff also did not have any comments. We do feel that this generally meets the zoning standards for the district. It meets the height standards and the other requirements that apply to the building type. The applicant has already gone through the review for the adjacent neighboring structures, so they have presented similar features and spaces and layouts on this home. So with that, we did mention the lot layout and the driveway access. There is one access from Pasagrove Way. They do have two accesses from the alleyway at the rear, similar to the structure just adjoining it. That does meet the standards that are applicable in the Land Development Code. As always, the board may make any comments that assist to ensure compatibility of the structure within the district. This is a single-family home. There are no other form or mass limitations other than those required under the design regulations, and I believe we do have the representative here to answer any questions.
Okay. You want to come forward, sir? Please state your name for the record.
Michael Carrier. I think we have the architect on Zoom as well.
Mr. Valerio?
Matt ID, if you guys have any architectural questions.
Okay.
I believe they're unmuted. He's the second case.
Okay, that's not him.
I don't believe we have the architect for this case on the.
Okay, well, maybe I can answer whatever questions.
Yeah, it may not be necessary.
I wanted him to be here just out of respect for all you
Sure, I
folks.
appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Well, I don't know if anybody has any particular questions, anything you want to say before we maybe start asking some questions?
No, we're currently developing the property right next door, and this is the exact same footprint. We try to change it a little bit, so not to, duplicate exactly what we're doing next door, and we're trying to keep the feel of the community without putting something that, we feel that doesn't fit within the area.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to make two comments. I appreciate very much, it looks like, obviously, you put in the garages in the back, which we encourage, and of course, that's great. And then how high is the bottom floor? That looks like it's just flood level, like 5 or 6?
It's above flood, yeah.
That's what it is, about 5, is that what you said?
It's above flood, so I'm imagining we're probably about 11 there.
Yeah, we're 11.4, 11.6.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, just off ground level.
Our grade level's about 5, so we're about 5.5 to 6.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I like the
Yep.
fact that you haven't gone 3 stories, you've just done
Right.
that to keep the whole elevation down, and that's a great look.
Yeah, that was intentional.
Encourage that, obviously, as well. Question, I know that the property, it had a curb cut, it looks like in this one, you're moving that to the west side of the property,
Yes,
okay?
we would like to do that and
And I guess my
maintain that.
question is, do we really need a curb cut since you have the garages in the back? From the standpoint of, it's a parking space in the front that I know isn't there now because you have a driveway.
Yeah, well, we were trying to keep, available parking within the community so we didn't have to necessarily park on the street. And we thought that
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but
we do have the spots in the back. We were asking for the additional one in the front.
I guess what I'm saying is I think what we're trying to encourage, not so much because you have a lot that already has access to the rear, which is great, and had a curb cut in the front.
Yes,
A lot of new properties don't want to use the alleys, and they
Right.
want a curb cut in the front, and they want to put their garages in the front, and we were trying to, not encourage that. Because every time you use a curb cut, you take away a parking space.
correct.
And so I'm saying in your case, because you have the garages in the back, it's just a question, is it
Yeah.
necessary to have a curb cut in the front? If you didn't, it would add another parking space to the community.
I mean, we have it on the property next door, and we kind of thought it would fit with the general, layout of the
Said something
area.
then, too.
And we've got two spots in the back. This would be a third spot. I don't think
It's
it's,
certainly something we
Yeah.
can't tell you no. I'm just
Right.
throwing that out there, right?
yeah.
You
We
know,
just thought it would be a little more manageable to have
like I
that
said, in
on
your
the front.
case, you already have a curb cut, so that makes it make more
Right.
sense. But, I'm a bit concerned that when
We're not changing the size of the curb cut. Yeah,
new people will come in and say, yes, we're building off the rear
right.
garages, but we also want a curb cut, even though we didn't have one before.
Yeah,
Because right now, the city, the way it is set up now, pretty much if you ask for it, it doesn't even go through us. People just get it. And so if you know, past the grill, it's, especially that area with the alleys, it's designed to have access from the back. So
Sure,
you can park in
sure.
the front. That was just my suggestion or question, so.
okay.
I've stated that. Does anybody have any questions of this gentleman? I think, personally, I think the design's very nice, and again, I'm really
Thank you very much.
not being a height issue, which is so many of these are, so,
Yeah, this is our third project in Paso Grill, so we kind of are getting a feel for it, and we definitely don't want to, butt heads with anybody and put in something that's not going to be appropriate. We want to kind of move under the radar a little bit as much as we can and not, make any waves, so.
Anybody else have anything you want to ask or comment on?
Well,
think so.
oh, go ahead.
I'm good. I don't have any questions.
Okay, it looks from the notes, staff notes, that the lot is limited to 2 driveways, not to exceed 20 feet in width at the property line.
That,
So
I'm sorry.
that's a zoning issue?
No, that would be along the alleyway. We would just measure at time of permitting. We just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board. They have the 2 connections from the alleyway, and then they have the 1 connection from the front, which would be allowed. It's just they're limited based on frontage, but we would evaluate that. The plan meets the zoning requirements.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't really tell. Is there actually 3 garages, three spaces in the back?
Well, one's like a car, one like a golf.
It's like a golf cart, yeah, it's like
that's
2
what
and a
I'm
half.
saying. It's probably
right,
not even
yeah.
big enough. I mean, and as far as I'm concerned, things on the alley, have at it, as far as that goes. So, it looks good, and I appreciate what y'all have done.
And we intend to clean up that alley too, as much as we can while we're there.
When you get to the city, you get involved in that stuff too.
Yeah, yeah.
okay?
We don't mind doing it while we're
I
there.
assume that Banyon's going down, which is gonna make a big difference.
Yeah, it's already gone.
It's already gone?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, all right, okay. right, okay, anybody else? Any questions? All right. I guess we don't have anything to vote on. We appreciate you coming down and giving us this information.
Terrific. Thanks for your time. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 6B, design review, 26119 for 1401 Paso Girl Way. Mr. Barry?
So we have both the applicant, the agent, architect, and the owner on the call. This is property address of 1401 Paso Girl Way, and this is a design review of a new house medium structure located on the property. You saw the demolition request for this property just a few months back. So you can see here the layout. To the left side of the screen is Paso Girl Way. To the south side is 14th Avenue. Staff and I believe the board always appreciates to see that connections are not along the primary thoroughfare. They are removing an existing cut that is along Paso Girl Way. They are relocating access to the 14th Avenue side, relatively close to Paso Girl Way, but there is that one drive connection there. You can see the front and the side elevation. So the right elevation would be looking at it from the street end. You can see the garage access there. That is the, I believe, board and batten siding on the 2 living levels, and then the ground floor, I believe, is a stucco siding. And then you can see the left elevation at the top of the screen looking from the neighbor's property, and then the rear from the waterfront. And see the layout of the 3 floors. Staff had a few minor zoning comments. Unfortunately, this was a very late addition. We did not have time to convene with our design reviewer. We will be engaging with her after this meeting, but we did want to get the board's input given that these meetings only take place monthly. We did have a few comments on the frontage trees. The city's code does promote the lower growing trees like the myrtles, buttonwoods, and so on along the frontage instead of larger trees. So those frontage trees would need to comply with that. The site plan did still show the driveway apron. As far as I know, there is no actual access provided from Paso Girl Way, but the apron was remaining, so that will need to be eliminated. The sidewalk would need to be replaced with that hex stamp, or we now have a hex supplier. If the owner would like to install the hex paver sidewalk at the frontage, that would be welcome, but it's not required. We did ask that on the elevations that the design flood elevation be shown. That's the required elevation 1 foot above base flood, just to ensure that the home does meet the height limits of 32 feet to the ridge of the roof and 28 feet to the midpoint. And because of the eave encroachment toward the northern property line, there is a requirement for gutters and downspouts. Again, these are minor zoning comments. We just wanted to point them out on our initial zoning review. As with the prior case, the board is welcome to make comments that assist to ensure compatibility of the structure with the district. This is a single-family use, so they aren't subject to additional design standards. I do feel that generally the applicant's done a good job at designing the structure, that it does fit in with the scale and the character and features of others in the vicinity. We will go through the more formal design review with our design reviewer after this meeting today. And as I mentioned, we do have the architect and the owners present on the call.
Okay, thank you. You all want to identify yourself, architect and owner?
Go ahead, Robert. Robert?
This is Laura and Bob Stark, the owners.
And I'm Alan Valerio, the registered architect.
Okay, thank you.
For Davis Design
I
Architect.
know Laura and Bob. I didn't think that was you, but we didn't get their pictures till just now, so good. So I have a couple questions, and Brandon may be able to answer these too a little bit. In the beginning, you talked about, so these are garages are going to be on the south side of the building, right? Which is where the cap end of 14th or the street end of 14th goes down there. And right now, that's just like grass, isn't it? And so which I think is great that they're going to use it that way. But, and maybe you said this, what are they going to do about that street end? Is the city involved in paving that or putting gravel on it, or how are we going to deal with that street end, if you know?
So typically, it would be the applicant's responsibility for extending any pavement. The city would accept that as part of a right-of-way utilization permit. We would have to work through the details on that with the applicant when they apply for a building permit.
Okay, have you all thought about that, either architect or owners, how you're going to, what you're going to do there on the street end, which will be the access to your garages?
We have
Well,
not,
right now it shows the access way into the garages and a back out space so you can back out and come out onto the main Pass-a-Grill Way face forward. So we have not gotten into any in-depth discussion with zoning about what to do with the rest of it.
And that's fine, I just was bringing it up while we're talking about it. First, like I said, again, you know,
Sure.
I think it's great you're using that as instead of putting the garages facing Pass-a-Grill Way, so that's excellent. But because it's just vegetation now, it's gonna have to be dealt with in some fashion, whether the city's gonna do that for you or you do it yourself, I don't know. We've had some discussions in the past about the inconsistencies of the street ends along there in Pass-a-Grill. Some are grass, and you don't even know they exist. They just look like spaces between houses. Some are, you know, shell or gravel which lets the water through, and some are actually asphalt, which obviously doesn't let the water through. And we've talked about that as an issue which we'd like to have some consistency with that. And so I'm pointing that out, that I think in the times we've talked before, we like to have shell or something used like that so the water doesn't get displaced and goes through. But since this is starting from literally from the ground, you know, I would hope the city would come to us if they're talking about paving that or putting asphalt in that. I don't believe that whatever is done is for you to pay for. I don't know. That's why maybe it's a later date, but I just bring that up now. So when that comes around, you'll know, have a little bit of a better idea of how that comes about. You know, I think our suggestion, I don't mean to speak for the rest of the board, but having previous discussions about street ends, we do like to have a shell if we can possibly do that. And I don't know, Mr. Berry, if when the city starts making a decision on how they're going to deal with that street end, are they going to come through to us in some fashion?
We will bring that back.
Okay,
yes.
just want you to think about that, all right?
Well, also, I believe the house, there's a vacant lot as well, just south of that, so that they would share that space. So I think that the other property owners would want to be privy to any conversations as well.
True, and when that property is built, I don't know, but I feel they probably would not have a driveway on Pass-a-Grill Way and would share that street end as being the access point, which exists on many places along Pass-a-Grill. That was just one that was never developed in the past. But yeah, we can talk about that in the future. I just wanted you to kind of be thinking about that because, you know, it's just vegetation now. So also I'd like to say of those things that Mr. Berry mentioned before, the trees, the pavers, the eaves, do you all understand that that's something that's going to be required of you and agree that that's something that you can go forward with?
Yeah, that's very easy to implement into the design.
I assume so. Like I said, this is, we
Sure.
First of all, I like the fact that we're trying to do this as fast as we can. We all know it takes forever to get things done around here, so I'm very thankful to you all for moving this along. And I think as long as we have assurances those things are going to happen, which certainly makes sense, that makes us feel better about not having to talk about this again, or you know, just move forward as quickly as you can. So those are things you understand, and you.
From an architectural standpoint, none of that is any problem. Robert, do you want to make a comment about it?
He's having trouble hearing. I agree. We made this very easy to accommodate and
Yeah,
appreciate
all
the
of that
input.
was very simple suggestions. No problem with any of it.
Excellent. Okay.
I had a question. I know there's some utility or equipment boxes that are right near the property line on the street end or near the street end. Are those what's showing on your drawing there? where it would impede your access to the street end if the driveway was there?
Are you talking about on the north side of the property?
South side of the property, on the street end, I think there's some utility boxes.
Oh, yes, yes. The turn-in is before that. The three-point turn back is before that.
Yeah, but I think the conversation was talking about utilizing the 14th Avenue street end, which would not be using the curb cut onto Paso Grill Way, and therefore would that equipment
Correct.
be in your way?
I think that if you wanted to, we could cut that out of the shell paved area, whatever. Just cut that out of the whole thing, and that would be more in the natural part, and that should not impede coming in and out.
Okay, that's what I was just wondering. If you're going to access from 14th, if
Yeah.
those were going to be in your way.
Sure.
That's all the questions I have.
Anybody else? Okay, well, I do thank, anything you all want to tell us about before we terminate this?
Appreciate this, working this in on short notice, thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We appreciate what you're doing. It's a beautiful design. I love everything you've done about it, and thank you so much. And Bob and Laura will see you around.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're on to 6C, square footage limitations for reconstruct. You know what I want to do, if I can? Can we move, let's move D up, because that's something, Holly, you need to be involved in. I know you got to leave pretty soon. So can we jump to 6D, which is Park and Corey Avenue signs? Is that all right to do that? Even though we approved the agenda?
Anybody said?
Okay, can we start doing the Park and Corey Avenue signs?
We do have a presentation, but it's really just the images that were published with the agenda, if we could get that pulled up to reference. We did hope to have a representative from Public Services present because they will need to guide any discussion or any direction on what needs to be refurbished or modified on the sign. We did briefly speak with them before this meeting, and we will have a representative at one of the future meetings, hopefully next month. Given the sign materials, we are expecting that they will need to be fully replaced. Kristen knows the material. I don't know offhand, but she does have some familiarity with any kind of sign refurbishment that would be involved with the work.
So based on the current material, it's like a 3D carve sign. So that is a sign foam material. If you can see on the Corey Ave sign on the side profile, there is a curve. You can actually see it through the back. So if they try to probably fasten that down, it will crack. It's very brittle once it's exposed to the elements, and hasn't been probably sealed in some time. So we did talk to, just in passing, again, we'd love to have a representative from Public Services come and tell you, but I think there may be some alternatives. Instead of like a 3D carve sign in the interim, there may be like Illuminite or some other substrate that we could use that still has the arch, if you like that, as far as the design, that can be cut that way, but it would probably be more of a vinyl overlay for that. Because I do know, Member Young, you had suggested another sign on the rear of the existing sign, so facing west. And that way, if there was just continuity of the same substrate, we could look at that as well.
The sign might not last through the storm. Can you show us the next group of pictures, like the proposed kind of look? Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think this is something then, because we don't have a representative from Public Works, that we should pass this to next month anyway, just to get a better idea?
I think so. I can share with you, though, in our brief conversation, that there is no electrical currently operational or irrigation. So those would be things to be considered in a possible design.
Well, I would say, and first off, kudos for Holly for doing a lot of this stuff, and if you want to speak, obviously do in a second about this whole thing, but I mean, it's a pretty pathetic sign. I mean, you know, with nothing live around it, it's old. I had never really noticed before, I should have, that the back of it says nothing. It just shows some electrical boxes and stuff, and I would have to say it's a pretty poor representation of what we'd like the public to see. And so, you know, I would almost think, before we talk about making Corey Avenue a historic district and all those kind of good things, it'd be nice to have a nice sign. So I don't know how the rest of y'all feel about it or want to comment on it, but, you know, I think that's very good what's been done. And Holly, do you want to talk about it some?
Well, I think we all agree that Corey Avenue, this is supposed to be a monument sign, and you hadn't even noticed it in years. It's not a good look for our city, not a good look for Corey Avenue, where we're trying to attract businesses down there and keep those afloat. As far as irrigation, I think these are all Zone 9 drought and sun-resistant plants that I had suggested. I think if we, you know, if there are any that might be delicate, go to something that's really hardy that doesn't need water.
Well,
Then let nature take its course.
It'd be watered right now if it was there. But no, it seems to me, and I don't know, that's why it'd be nice to have somebody from Public Works or Parks or something like that. That's such a small area. It'd be silly to irrigate it when you could hand water, especially if they're drought resistant. They just require somebody, you know, once every 2 weeks with a watering can to go over there and do that if it hasn't been raining. So I think that is a simple thing. As far as getting it electrically hooked up, I don't know. Although it looks like there's like an electrical box on the back of that.
Yeah,
There is. I just don't think it's operational due to the storms.
Easy fix.
Right.
So let's go ahead, and I think we all have a feeling that does anybody want to comment on the design that Holly's proposed, whether there should be any differences or changes?
I think it looks great. I think my only question would be, I know we're talking about getting this ball kind of rolling soon, as I noticed the lights up at the top with the balls, which I love, but I know that we were going through an issue with the Vena bridge lights and the whole bulb thing being a problem. That would be my only call out, is if to move it along kind of more of an expeditious fashion, that would be the only thing. And then maybe if there could be some sort of a reflective element, just because unfortunately we know people like to enjoy their cocktails on the beach, and maybe if there's something reflective, maybe they won't.
Well, that could be done with the different substrate, like Lumilite. If it is done in vinyl, you can incorporate maybe the outline or some certain.
Right.
So you're not asking whether it's going to attract turtles, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
But we can certainly bring it back.
To open that can of worms.
I want to get ahead of it now. So yeah, we can talk.
I don't think it's I'm more concerned about attracting
drunks.
Right. Yes.
I get that, but no, I'm saying when we talk about the lighting on top, I really can't imagine that could even remotely be an issue. I was joking, of course. Vena, of course, is up in the air. The Vena lights are higher than these are. These would attract turtles like people's cell phones would. So
yeah.
Well, they could be amber lights or you know, something.
I think it looks
turtle
beautiful.
appropriate.
I love it.
Well,
I think it's great.
So I think if we can say, from a board of Sean, if you agree that, you know, if we can get staff back here next month or whatever, but this is a design we would like to have input on, then sent. I don't want you. Holly, I don't think you're leaving in 4 minutes, okay? So,
I don't think I'm leaving in 4 minutes.
Blowing in the doors. Doors are blowing in.
sorry, the
Oh my.
papers are blowing down the hallway
Look at
like the Wizard of Oz.
So these were just some ideas, just to give everybody an idea. If we had a wee budget, we could just repurpose the old sign the way it is and just refresh it. As far as the sign goes, it's got the old city logo on it. I think that sign should be replaced. So whatever the design is, I'm sure there's a graphic artist or who could come up with something that would turn this into a monument sign.
Well, I would just, you know, I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, this is something that would have to go through the city commission at some point, or would it not?
I mean, it depends on the type of modifications that we're looking at. I mean,
if it's gonna, I don't know if there's a monetary threshold or something, but my suggestion would be that, Holly, that the way it looks now is pretty nice, and if we start asking people to start putting more 2 cents in, it's just gonna get pushed down the line.
Agreed.
And so if we could maybe have staff come in and say, this is what it's gonna cost to do this, is this design, or what we can do, then we can make a referral to the commission that we're recommending it be done like this. And if they wanna change or delay it in some fashion, well, that would be their own prerogative.
but if I may, I believe if we can have public services come, they may have a CIP, they may be part of a project they already have in line. It just may be number 48 out of whatever, I don't know, but I would prefer they comment on that to provide you the update and overall concept of it.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's table this for today, and we'll pass it the next month. Is that okay? All right, very good. All right. We have to table everything in there. Okay, so
You can try and do the beach access before you run out, or?
Yes, can I jump in,
Yeah, sure.
jump in front again?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's go to 6E. Reclaiming public access to.
I think we had a discussion as a board, it might have been during a city commission workshop, where the mayor at the time, I believe he said, when we were talking about hotels on the beach, that the public has lost their access on either sides, or one side, because hurricanes have happened, stuff starts getting stacked up. Next thing you know, a fence goes in or a gate goes in, and all of a sudden, that walkway, that public access, is no longer. And there was talk of, I believe, when Adrian Petrillo was the mayor, he said that he would like the city to survey those hotels to make sure that the public accesses are still there. I believe there was one on the left-hand side at the Luce, and there is no more a walkway. It is a parking arm that goes down across the whole span. So I don't know where we are with that. I don't think I made this up in my head. Does anybody else remember this conversation?
I remember the conversation, but I don't remember where it came, how
I
it ended
cannot
up.
remember where it took place, but I do remember the mayor was there. So I think it was in one of our workshops that we had with them. It was like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe longer.
Before the storms or right after?
Maybe before the storms.
Yeah, I think, and anybody can jump in on this, but I think that there's a lot of stuff going on right now within the city having to do with public and private beachfront and signage and customary usage and all these things that we're kind of working through now, where I believe this would be relevant to that conversation. And I think the city commission is already knee-deep in that right now. Does that sound right, Chloe? You know what I'm saying?
That sounds correct to me, although I will say I don't typically attend the city commission meetings.
Yeah, okay.
That's
what
Ralph.
I'm saying
but-
is, what I'm saying is I think this issue is part of that bigger issue that's kind of being addressed beach-wide. And I don't know whether, for the historic board at this stage, we need to get involved in that, because I think it's being addressed. Because sign ordinances, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't apply to us, but I just pay attention to some things, and that's one of the things. And I think that all goes hand in glove as to what they're trying to figure out. So I think we can just put this up for discussion, like we said, and just see where that's turning up. But I believe that's the case. Does that make sense to Commissioner Brandon at all?
I haven't seen anything in minutes or the commission meetings that specifically speaks to the access walkways that the hotels were, the easement that the hotels were supposed to provide to the side of the property. And that's what the survey was supposed to do, is because these were historical. These are, we're talking about
Yes.
way back, and now that a lot of properties have changed hands,
Well,
and maybe the new owners aren't aware, and like I said, I believe there used to be an access
Right.
easement at the loose, and it's no longer there.
well, I do know, as I said, that there's a discussion going on now, the city attorney, Mr. Brooks, is involved in, about customary usage. And I believe customary usage is going to apply to all those things, not just walking along the beach, because some of the private hotel owners, I guess, are trying to suggest that they own everything down to the water line, so people can't walk on the beach, you know, kind of scenario. And so that's a hot topic right now that I think this is part and parcel of, okay? And so I think that's being addressed at that level, and we should just, I think you should bring this up again in a couple of months, is what I'm saying, if that makes sense.
Well-
Contact our city commissioners.
Yeah, well, I've had some contact. That's why I know some of the stuff is happening at the moment, having
Well,
spoken to our commissioner.
I can certainly get in touch with my commissioner
Right.
and just reiterate me as not from the board, but as a citizen, would like to see this as part of the discussion that they're having with the hoteliers. So just so it doesn't get missed, and then, you know, in 5 years, we don't have any
Right, access.
I think
easements.
I think it kind of goes hand in hand, honestly. I mean, I feel like it's part and parcel of the whole thing, because if someone is saying, I own all of the beach behind the property, then that would also mean that I would own what's adjacent to me on maybe either side. So I don't think it would be a bad idea just to throw it out as a, you know, this might be something worth looking into at the same time as you're looking at what are all of the other setbacks. I don't think it would be a bad idea, because instead of going back and having to do more work, that's just my opinion.
And I think they're doing that. That's what I'm saying. I think this is all, like you said, that they are. I can guarantee you the city commissioners are aware that there's citizens out there that are complaining about not being able to walk down to the beach. Okay, so that's all part of this customary usage and all where this is going. So, as I said, let's see where that kind of plays itself out, and then we'll see where we are at that point. But I think that's a hot topic, as I said. There's lawsuits. Okay, so that's what's going on. Okay?
That's it.
Did you want to try to brave the elements?
Is it, can you see if it's raining still?
It's raining.
Pouring, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back now then to
C? Square footage?
6C. Yes, sorry, I thought you said C. Look, yeah, okay, square footage limitations for reconstructed multifamily residences. Mr. Barry, is that going to be you?
Yeah, so we just wanted to bring this topic up for board discussion. As you're aware and have seen in the demolitions that Kristen mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we are losing not only a lot of historic structures and a lot of historic homes, but we are losing a significant number of the multifamily or multiple single-family developments that we have in Paso Grill, which is something that is fairly unique to Paso Grill. Looking at our city in general, it's been brought up in both our 1989 original historic survey of the area, the original National Register designation survey, the 2003 boundary increase, as well as a 2015 resurvey of the district, as something that really sticks out even among the barrier islands in Pinellas County. These are unique developments, and they do contrast pretty significantly with the more suburban development that we have elsewhere in St. Pete Beach. So we have seen one redevelopment that is redeveloping as a multifamily structure and taking advantage of the current code option, but only with variances that were granted, and that was the barracks project at 100 PAG that went through the Board of Adjustment as well as this board last year. They did have to obtain variances to be able to develop the project that they ultimately were approved by the Board of Adjustment for at that meeting. So what staff wanted to bring up with you, and just get board input on the potential for allowing some relief. This would be codified relief. It would not be through the Board of Adjustment, to potentially allow for additional square footage of redeveloped multifamily developments in Paso Grill. There are very, very few properties that are in the Paso Grill zoning district that are allowed to redevelop electively. The home at 202 Paso Grill Way, the colonial style home that came to this board for a design review, I believe it was early last year. They have enough land area to be able to develop a two-family home. They were eligible to redevelop with a larger square footage. That is not allowed for most of the other properties in Paso Grill. Almost any platted single lot that redevelops is allowed a single-family home, or they're limited. If they had multifamily prior to demolition, they can redevelop, but they are limited to the same living square footage. I just wanted to get the board's input, maybe start the discussion. We don't need to have any direction today. This is something that has just been on our minds, and it's been something we've been thinking about as we've seen these demolition cases move forward. Does the board desire potentially to allow for a slight increase in square footage of these multifamily developments, as opposed to potentially seeing larger single-family developments go back on the same property?
Kurt?
I have some thoughts on it, but
I do too. You want to go ahead, Sean?
I don't recall at the end of the day what the Board of Adjustment approved for the property, the barracks property. They were talking about doubling the size of the footprint of each unit by making it a two-story, which kept the idea that we had small multifamilies, but it didn't at all resemble what was there. So I don't know where to put that mix of things together. I know that tearing something down and then building it to the edges of the property is not what the goal is, but I don't know how we're going to control it once we start letting the Pandora out of the box. There's many properties that I can think of off the top of my head that are either 2 to 3 units on single lots, or they are combination of 5 or 6 units on a combination of 2 lots. That are all put together as a single parcel. And I don't know when they all start redeveloping and they're all in the 400 to 500 square foot range or 750 square foot range, and they start trying to make them larger, what it means. I mean, and then that brings up all kinds of other questions, like I'd have to excuse myself from some of the conversation because I own these type of properties. But elevation of a series of properties that I have that have duplex with carports in between. And if I elevated it based on today's deal, the carport area would become mute. Yet it's part of the same roof line that exists today. And I'd have no ability to utilize it other than turn it into a porch. So yes, it would behoove to be able to increase the square footage a certain amount, I believe. I just don't know how to control it.
Well, I'd like to say first, I think that it's important to encourage the rebuild of these multi-unit buildings, because it is a part of Paso Grill. What made Paso Grill unique, it wasn't just single-family residences, and so that mixed use is going away. Of course, a lot of us know that that have lived there for a long time, that the percentage of renters now compared to 30 years ago is minimal, because most people aren't building to rent small units. But I think we should encourage it if it can be done. Now, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, and I believe this to be the case, and this is just because our ordinances, either by oversight or whatever, we didn't really catch up with it. So you got a 500 square foot apartment, let's say, or like the barracks we were talking about, when we talked about that before. My understanding is, because we now have FEMA and they can't rebuild it on ground level, so they have to build it higher. But the ordinance, the way we have this, that's like adding square footage. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So we're saying if you wanted to take a one-story, 500 square foot existing structure and make it FEMA compliant, under the ordinances, you couldn't do that because they would call that 1,000 square feet and it's too much. And so I think we all recognize, if that's the case, the common sense of that anybody should be able to replicate what they have as a second floor. And right now, they aren't allowed to do that, right?
That's correct, and that is already a modification that are in the pending amendments, so you have already accounted for that. This would solely be for additional living space, habitable space.
I just wanted to make clear that that's the first step we're at. So people are allowed to do that. So now the next question would be, I guess, when we get down to it, if you had a 500 square foot place that you're now going to be allowed to make that 2 stories and replicate that, is that somehow economically not feasible? That people 30 years ago were happy with a 500 square foot place, but now they're not, so they need a bigger space to be in. And is that just because of our culture that's changed, or is there some building requirements that's going to affect that 500 square feet?
So it's not at 500 square feet. I don't think there's any basis to say that it would be something in the Florida building code that would prevent them from reconstructing. I did speak to the building official about this, and getting everything that you need to have a habitable living space would not put you over 500 square feet.
Well, let's say, especially because you can use the ground floor that's uninhabitable to do a lot of those things.
Correct. The argument that had been made as part of the basis for the variance for the barracks rebuild project was that it wasn't a Florida building code requirement, but it was a Fair Housing Act requirement to be able to develop. They needed the square footage that they provided because there was, for example, with it being a 2-story living space, they needed to have a bathroom at the ground level. Could it have possibly been done as a 1-story living space project and not needed that additional bathroom? That's possible, but that had been the argument that they made, and that seemed to be accepted, at least in part, by the Board of Adjustment. So there are other requirements that factor in. There's the zoning codes. There might be a limitation on rebuilding a single level structure in a way that would make sense, whereas with a 2 living level structure, it would be more viable. But that may add additional living square footage for the internal circulation, potentially for a rental product, the requirements for the first living level, and so on.
Okay, just so we're clear, when we say first living level, we're talking about the second floor.
The second floor, correct,
Okay,
yes.
so that's what, so we're not talking about, a historically designated structure that they want to fix up, and it's on ground level if there's any doesn't exist anymore.
Correct.
Or they could maybe do additions to those things, which might be appropriate because that's old stuff, right? But on a new build, so, and I believe when the Board of Adjustment dealt with the barracks, it wasn't just allowing them to go to a second floor or double the size like we talked about we're getting ready to codify anyway. They wanted more than that, and the Board of Adjustment gave them that. And that
Correct. I don't remember the exact number, but even accounting for the building code upgrades, the mechanical closets, and the other features that were not in the original development.
I could simply say it. They have a 1-story structure. We're going to codify to let them build a second floor, which would be the first living space, which would be an exact duplicate. But then the Board of Adjustment allowed them to then build a 3rd floor. Okay, and so that's, I think, where the rubber meets the road. Is, I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels about it.
Part of their argument was that as we rebuild, we're doubling our square footage already, but you're getting ready to give up the BFE area as square footage, so that's why we should be allowed to put two living levels up.
Yeah.
Was the argument he actually made here in our presence.
And of course, we all recall, we all did not want that. And our recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, I think, if we were even at that stage, I don't remember if we made a recommendation to them or not. I don't know if we even were asked to do that, or we were just brought in for information purposes. I think my memory is it was just for information purposes, although I'd argue today we should have been able to make a recommendation, but regardless, the Board of Adjustment allowed them that third story. And so, to me, if we accept the fact that they're allowed to build a second floor and replicate what already exists, then, you know, now we're talking about codifying them being able to add a more square footage. And I think what I would ask is if the staff might have some recommendations on that. I think the real issue for us is going to be, should we be allowing, or should the codes change so they can build a third story? Really, is what this really boils down to, because right now they can't even build, we're going to codify it to let them build a second story. We're talking about a new build. And so when we talk about small apartments where people lived in 500 square feet, now we're talking about a small apartment where they have 2 floors they can live in, if it goes that far. And in my opinion, I think then we're talking about height issues that we had with, you know, they want, at the barracks, of course, they want a rooftop amenity as well. And so that changed significantly the look of going from a small, cute little, you know, courtyard apartments that are, you know, little rare things in many urban areas, but in Paso Roble were unique and charming, to building 3 stories that's going to look like everything else. And so, obviously, I wonder what everybody else, but my kind of thought process would be, I could see maybe adding some square footage, but I don't think adding a whole third story is appropriate. I mean, unless they had a 2-story apartment to start with, right? And then they can kind of build up to a third story anyway, because now they can't use the first story anymore. So, you know, I think there has to be some connection to the past, but, you know.
And I believe you referenced this in your response. I did want to point out they did comply dimensionally with the height limit, and technically if they had wanted to take the square footage of the barracks units, which I believe is 450 square feet, if they wanted to allocate it between 2 living stories, have a 3-story structure with the garage floor, based on the new code, they would be allowed to do that. You are correct that they did, even with the internal circulation and the other building code requirements, they did still exceed the square footage. I believe it was a little over 200 square feet. That was actual additional living space, even with carving out those additional requirements. But
I think the argument was made essentially that it was you know, more of a financial decision, you know, that we need this so we can sell these or we can rent these, you know. And so then we're changing the whole concept of a quaint apartment to a Airbnb or a condo or something, you know, where the whole, and so I would be very reluctant to, because then we're taking what was the uniqueness about these places that we're trying to protect, that right now are difficult for people to rebuild because of the way the codes are, allow them to do that, but not change the whole look of it into an entirely different animal.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that particular project, the barracks, I believe they requested 5 to 6 variances, if I'm not mistaken. And I think, to your point, you know, as an example, if you look at Member Hurley's properties, they are what Paso Grill is. And I feel that if we start giving blanket approvals, I think we're, for people that are coming in, looking just to monetize an opportunity versus maintain what we are as a community, we're on a slippery slope. And I unfortunately think we're already going down that slippery slope. I'm very nervous about, you know, I can certainly understand, to both of your points, you know, if they wanted to do a second level, okay, that's certainly, I think, personally understandable, given the way that we've obviously have experienced, unfortunately, Helene. Heaven forbid we get another Helene that comes through. I start getting concerned about then do we go to a third floor? And then, well, wait, we need to have the overhang over the sidewalk, because what about a balcony? Why can't we have that? And then also, we'd like to have the rooftop, so that way people can be able to go, I think we have to be very, very careful.
Well, I agree, and so I guess the way to frame this more is, and it's the easiest way to make this discussion, talk about the barracks situation. To go from the barracks, which were there, to what has been approved, there's nothing historic about it. And so when we're talking, when you're coming to the historic board, we're saying, how do we keep this to look, as I said, we can't change the animal. If it's supposed to be a 4-unit, courtyard apartment, well then it should remain a 4-unit courtroom apartment that's maybe 2 stories if it was 1 story to start with. Maybe they do get part of the 3-story under the codes that exist, and maybe there should be allowable some extra square footage if there's a real need for that, let's say, or 10% or something like that. But when they want to change the whole thing, I think you understand what I'm saying. Then I have a problem with when we've gone from we want to retain this quaint historic look, and then they build something that's not quaint or historic at all because they've made it 3-story and they want a rooftop and all that kind of stuff. I mean, a 1-story apartment could have a rooftop, but they don't. So let's not change what the animal is. I don't know if that's guidance for what you want to do. I don't know, but Yeah.
And I don't think we're looking to do anything in particular. We just wanted to engage the board on it because we just have noticed a number of demolitions that have been coming forward, and it is.
Well, I think I would encourage. I think it's great if we could retain or have new builds that retain that look. I'm just concerned that the example we have doesn't retain that look. It's not like it's just
I think if anything, what we've learned, well, pre-Helene, especially post-Helene, unfortunately, is we've been found, our little area's been discovered, and people, before you would be able to say, oh yes, that's the Hurleys that live there, or the Lowrys that live there, or that's whoever. And what we're finding, I fear, is that it's becoming more of a monetization effect. And so I think that if we going on, oh, they'll be honest and tell us that they're going to give us something that looks historically relevant, or they're going to do X, Y, or Z, and then the next thing we know, it's going before the Board of Adjustment. It looks nothing like what we anticipated, and then our hands are tied. And so for me, I am very fearful.
I can't, there's not a whole lot more to add. When you redevelop completely, you're allowed to change. And once we allow them to change and we give them the square footage they want and the density they want, then that'll continue to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I say we, I mean as a city.
And let me just put a earmark what we're talking about right now, because when we discuss some stuff after we talk about the Villa Del Mar bridges, that'll be relevant to what I want to talk about. Okay. So, anything else on square footage limitations? Anything else from staff? Any questions you have or anything? I mean, this is obviously just beginning a discussion, right?
Right.
Okay.
No, thank you.
All right, so we have 6F, which is the Villa Del Mar bridge lights.
So I did receive an update from our public services director. He had mentioned there are some minor structural integrity improvements that need to be made to support the new lights. However, let's see here. The engineering design phase kicked off at the end of June, and they are expecting installation in fall, winter after the design is completed.
Okay.
I know you're not the person to ask maybe, but I know fall, winter is a little vague, so by the end of the year, I guess.
I'll confirm that and let the board know.
Yes, please.
I'll let you know.
Thank you. Sorry.
Problem.
Okay, next I have a 6G discussion about the historic district. And I couldn't, probably wouldn't make a difference now, but I couldn't access the internet because I wanted to be able to refer to the LDC. Can you get that up, Brandon?
I could try. Can we pull up the desktop, please?
And if you can't, this will be a shorter discussion, but I can.
I'm curious, and this might be really asking a lot, and I know we're in the effort of preserving trees. Is it possible to get copies of the LDC?
Yes. We could print that out for you.
Well, yeah.
I'm a paper
I know,
person.
but didn't you get a big booklet in the beginning? Not all the LDCs, you just got copies of what kind of relevant to us, so you didn't get the whole thing.
I didn't.
You didn't?
I didn't
Okay.
get the whole thing. Well,
Well, no, I'm saying,
I think it would be
section
good-
20 and whatever.
Well, I got the 20 and
28
40.
40, yes.
but I feel like maybe there's been a lot of things that have changed since then.
That's fine. Well, that's,
More to come.
yeah. So did you get that up?
This is Division 28.
Okay, yeah, scroll down the definitions. You're already on it, but just scroll down on the main part. And this is for the board, and I'm sorry we have two members that aren't here because I want you all to familiarize yourself with some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about or will be talking about in the future. And so I want to make sure you kind of understand what we have in our LDC. So the definition of historic district means a geographically definable area designated pursuant to this division, possessing a significant concentration, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so for years, I don't think I'm the only one, I've been under the assumption that Paso Grill south of 32nd is a historic district. We call it a historic district. I think we have signs that say that. And when we talk about things in emails, we often refer to Paso Grill as being a historic district. Okay, well, it's come to my attention, and I'll tell you why. When I was reading about variances, the way I read it, in a historic district, if there's a variance, it has to go through the historic board, and that I felt that we could, if our say-so was the final, wouldn't go to the Board of Adjustment, that the historic board should be the gatekeeper for the historic district when it comes to variances, because what can happen is if you've got a historically designated house and you want a variance, you go to the historic board. And if the historic board says no, then that person can voluntarily remove their historic designation and then go to the Board of Adjustment on the same issue, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but certainly shows that we have no teeth, which we've known that for a while. But I thought that was one part where it could show that in the historic district, the historic board has the input, because we're supposed to have the knowledge about the historical aspect, that the Board of Adjustment can take care of the rest of the city, but on those matters, we would control. Well, apparently that's not the case, because we're not an historic district as far as the LDC is concerned. Okay? And Brandon and I had this discussion, and I believe he's probably correct. And I think because when this became a historic district, that was many, many years ago, and I assumed the things were done correctly, that when we see the words historic district in the LDC, that applies to where we are. Apparently it doesn't, because if you'll go to section 2819, please, Brandon. The designation procedure, notification required, and specifically you go down to, we all know most of this stuff because almost entirely we deal with individual homes, right? When we have designations. Okay, if you go to subsection 4 and you have to read, I'm not going to read it out loud, I want you to recognize this and when you do your homework, look at this stuff. But it basically talks about how if we propose a historic district area designations, that's different than a home. what has to be done to the public, notice, 30 days, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And apparently that, I was making an assumption that was all done
We did
15, 20 years ago.
We did do that,
Okay, well, then then we need to find that,
because a bunch of homes got torn down at that time because they didn't want to be part of it.
okay.
It was a mailing,
Well,
it was mid-2000s maybe.
I'm glad you're here, Sean, because I wasn't here for that. And so I don't know whether we're just at odds, whether we really are a historic district or we really aren't because we haven't done the proper procedures years ago when we started calling it a historic district to then follow up in the LDC as if with the definition of historic district, okay? Because I think, and Brandon, you might, I maybe didn't find that part. Remember we talked about whether every property owner has to buy into it, or and where was that?
That I believe, at least in the context we were talking about it, that's the last sentence here. The properties affected by such district designation shall not be subject to the certificate of appropriateness requirements of this division unless effectively they opt in, they submit written
Right.
application.
Right. So the way it stands from staff's point of view, and I'm not arguing with Brandon or saying he's wrong, I don't know, about that goes. It would be that for us to really be a real historic district, as far as the LDC is concerned, we would have to have written author or agreement from every single property owner in the historic district today. And I'm pretty confident we never went through that process, even if it was 15 years ago, where people would have to say, yes, I want this to be a historic district.
We'd have to go way back and see if we could find that documentation. It was a no answer opt-in kind of situation, as I recall. And that's what was confusing for a lot of people. I don't know if it ever got completed. I know the notices all went out to every homeowner. A lot of property owners panicked, tore their places down if they were in disrepair, if they didn't know what they were going to do with them, because they didn't want to get caught up in something that was going to potentially restrict their use of the property.
Well, there's also a disconnect in the verbiage we use. We're a national historic district, okay, right?
Correct.
That doesn't necessarily mean we're a historic district under the LDC. And so that's where you would say that's where the difference lies.
And it might be that based on the timeline and based on when we did our change of designation, that I still need to get squared away, that may have been why those notices went out about that time, around 2003, somewhere in that area.
Now,
I actually know who the building official was. I just can't get his name right now. It was Carl, I think. Carlson was on the development.
And then if you go to 28.21C, okay, that would be the procedure about how we would come around to get an actual historic defined as in the LDC, by making a recommendation to the city commission, who would do what's left there in 2821C. And so we all need to start thinking about this because, again, I've been apparently living under the belief that we really are a historic district as defined by the LDC, and apparently we're not. And so, if we really want to have okay, and here's a question I would have for staff. Okay, so my understanding, we could go to the city commission and we could get them potentially, if they agreed to modify the LDC, where we wouldn't have to get written approval from every single property owner, but we could do like a super majority, or we could pick some amount where they would have to go in front of the people to decide whether or not they wanted to actually have a historic district as far as the LDC goes. Brandon also mentioned, for example, the property owners on 8th Avenue might all agree that might be an easy one for that area to be, an historic district. And of course, I think we need to take the temperature of the citizens down there to feel if they really want to do that or not. But a question I would have for staff is the way the LDC is written now, if we were in fact a historic district as defined by the LDC, how would that change anything from where it is right now? Now, clearly, my argument about the variance, that we would be the gatekeeper of the historic district, that would be a difference. But is there anything else that would be affected the way, and you may not be able to answer that today, this is for discussion, but you can think of where if we were to go to the city commission and say, hey, we would like to be a historic district, we'd like you to change it to a supermajority where we'd have to look into that, where it's 60% or 65% of the citizens that live south of 32nd Avenue, what we now call the historic district, if they wanted to, that many people wanted to be a historic district, the city commission could make a ruling or vote whether they wanted to change that. Once they did that, then we could put together a recommendation to the city commission to say we'd like this to become, under the procedures outlined here, to become a historic district. And the way I look at it right now, if that was to happen, the only thing that, without changing other parts of the LDC, that would make a difference would be, we would be in charge potentially of variances. Unless there's something else out there, which could easily be, I just don't know what they are. And so, if you have an answer, we can talk about it next month, but it's, I just want to start bringing that up because I don't know how, what you all think, if you agree with me that we always thought this was really a historic district and it really isn't. we should have different names for these things. But it appears, it seems to me, if there's an actual historic district, that there shouldn't be a scenario where it's all voluntary, and if the property owner doesn't get what they want through the historic board, they can just remove the historic designation and go to the Board of Adjustment. That just doesn't, it just seems inconsistent and not make sense. Now, if most of the people that live south of 32nd Avenue or Pass Girl think it should be that way, then that's fine. But, I think it's time we kind of made a decision or try to push that to see do we really want to make it a historic district, which, as you know, it would be impossible to get every single person, every single property owner to agree to it, because there's many property owners that are just investors. They don't live there, and they wouldn't want any limitation. So how do you all, in discussion, am I just speaking out of turn here, or does it make sense, or does it, or...
It makes sense. I also thought that we were obviously a historic district, so it kind of is a little bit of a surprise.
Well, that's why I'm saying, if you start reading those particular...
Bless you.
So sorry.
If you start reading those particular aspects of the LDC and start looking at it closer, especially when you look at the part where it says how you become a historic district, if we in fact did not become like that the way we think, then we're not. So, I guess the question would be for future discussions is, and I would ask that we maybe push this to next month as well, just as a further discussion item, and we probably need a lot of input from a lot of different people, but.
To answer your question about what impacts under the city's current code, if the city commission were to declare Pass Grill a local historic district, but there were to be no property owners who opt in, everyone decides to not opt into the district, the only additional powers that I read in the code that would provide to the board is that you would have the option to review permits prior to issuance, because that is applicable to the district. It's not an opt-in situation. So you would have the ability to look at permits prior to them being issued. There aren't any review criteria. They would not be subject to the certificate of appropriateness. So it's not something the board could deny, but it's something that we could bring to you. As we've talked about, I am familiar with other jurisdictions that don't have a 100% opt-in requirement. It tends to be a super majority, like you mentioned, a 2/3 3/5 of the property within the designated district would opt in. So,
Well, see, and that's where part of this confusion with me, because we've had discussions in the past about, well, according to the LDC, again, assuming back in the old days when I thought we actually were a historic district, that we're supposed to be able to review every permit, and we're like, we can't do that. We don't care, should we be reviewing permits on, adding wall plugs and stuff like that? And staff basically, I wasn't told at that time out, at least I remember, you're not a historic district, don't even worry yourself about that. It was kind of like we were trying to parse our way or work our way through that. And so I kept, believing that we were actually a historic district as far as the LDC is concerned. And yes, I think obviously if we became a real historic district under the LDC, we would have to modify how that works as far as permits, because clearly you wouldn't want, I don't even know how many homes there are, 400 homes down there. Every time they want to get a permit, they have to get a certificate of appropriateness through it wouldn't make sense. So we could change that, which would be, I think, relatively simple enough if we get down that far down the road. But again, we're just beginning the discussion. There might, as we think about it, there might be other things that pop up where we would say, oh, well, we'd have to change this or that. But so to me, it's not a big ask if the citizens want that, because it's not like suddenly the historic board is saying, you can't paint your house that color. It's not like that at all. The only effect would be, which is already built into the LDC, is that when variances are concerned, this in the historic district, if it became that, the historic board would have would either issue a certificate of appropriateness or they wouldn't, and it wouldn't go beyond that. So, I would just ask us if we can pass this as a discussion item for next month. And while I'm on that subject, is everybody, at least of the members here, do y'all plan on being here next month? I mean, only reason I ask is summertime is tough.
I don't believe I'll be here next month.
Do you know anything from anybody else? Because I probably wouldn't be, but I would come back for this if we need to have 4 people. So maybe we could just have.
we don't have any cases. We have changed the board rules, so we would be able to, the board would be able to take action with 3. I don't believe we have any cases that would require 4. But I can email for member availability after this.
That would help me make a decision as far as what my plans would be. But be that as it may, so let's just say we're going to talk about this or bring this up for discussion next month, and hopefully the 2 members that aren't here, but you 2 will have read some of this and have a kind of a feel for it, okay? And maybe talk to some of your people that you know about what the temperature of the area is down there, whether this is something worth go forward with. You know, if no one wants to do it, well, I mean, that's not the feeling I get. And when you see these people out here today for these plaque presentations, I get the feeling those people would be wanting to do something like that. Anyway, Laura, do you have something you wanted to mention, I think? Yeah, sorry.
Do you swear or affirm the information that you will share with the board is truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Laura Canary, Community Development Director. Chairman Lowry, I think you're absolutely on the right track. So part of the purpose of bringing the presentation next month, it was twofold. As a subsequent step, we intend to bring it to City Commission as well. There's, as we've had such a number of designations in combo with the demolitions, in tandem with as we put up new CIP and public improvements such as lighting and things like that, we've had some questions on how we can tie that back to the historic district. And then when you talk about, is it really a memorialized historic district or not? I think, in my opinion, you're going, again, in the right direction with having the discussion, and then once you all determine and the community decides, okay, let's, for example, say that we want to make it a memorialized historic district, then I think we need to go back to the drawing board and then say, okay, does it make sense, you know, I believe it was St. Pete that uses a 50% plus 1, you know, that's where you have the flexibility to then try and, you know, work backwards almost based on the goal that you want to achieve. And it may come to a point where, depending on what that threshold is, maybe you do start to look at a smaller district, such as 8th Avenue as a starting point that then can just evolve into more.
Right, no, and that's a very good point, and I think that's, since you mentioned that, you know, we do, if you look at the history of the historic district of Pascagoula, it started out like 12th Avenue and below, and then it was added up to 32nd, and as you know, the 12th Avenue below, or 15th, 16th, whatever, there is a distinction between down there, because it's two-way streets where you can park on both sides, everybody's on every garage is on an alley, and then when you get a little bit further up Pascagoula, more into 15th, 16th, 17th, then you might have parking only on one side of the street and more curb cuts. The homes were all built, you know, there's a time frame difference. And so, yeah, that is a good idea that you can almost look at it, you can segment it in a different way depending on what the people want. You know what I mean? So that's a good point, because it's not like everything's uniform after 32nd, from 32nd down.
And sometimes there's a lot of apprehension, because if you are, say a potentially non-contributing structure that now is part of that district, and now you are subject to all of the same design guidelines and restrictions, which again can partly be the goal that we have, and so it's...
Except for the way, that's why I asked, as we are right now, okay, if you were a non-contributing structure, you wouldn't be subject to the historic board.
Correct.
Okay, because the only thing that would change is in a historic district, maybe a variance, how that's approached from the city, or permits. I mean, the way it's developed right now. And I don't know about the rest of the board, but this is, in my opinion, it's not a power grab to try to have more teeth. It's just to say, if this is really a historic district, then the historic board should be the gatekeeper for things as large as variances, because a variance could be something that totally changes the look of the neighborhood. And so the whole concept of size and scale and compatibility, the Board of Adjustment could say, ooh, we don't care about that. And I'm not throwing rocks at the Board of Adjustment. I'm just saying they're there for a reason. We're supposed to be here for a reason. And, you know, that's the only change I think is happening, which is a very, very small change. But, yeah, because you're right. I don't want people out there to think, oh, if we become a historic district, I won't be able to do what I want to do. Well, they can. They're building their house themselves is individually historic. It's just the district.
And it's a more holistic way when we look at, you know, historic preservation versus site specifically. So I think, again, but we look forward to the discussion next month for sure. Thank you.
And I think I've talked myself out of the rainstorm.
I think so.
So, anybody want to add anything on that as far as, like I said, everyone's got a little homework maybe, and then we talked about the next meeting is right now set for September 3rd, but Brandon, you're going to try to get more information on that. I'm a maybe. If we're needed, if we're going to have something, do we even have things scheduled on the calendars?
We have a few items scheduled,
okay.
So.
All right, anything else for anybody?
I'm good.
All right, thank you all for putting up with me.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.